It's My Nerd World, a space opera show, and I am your host, Jon Justice. Long overdue new episode of a space opera show, because I want to talk about Avatar, The Way of Water. This is my instinctive reaction review of the next installment of James Cameron's Avatar series. If you want to email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com. You can also leave a comment up on YouTube if you happen to be watching there as well. Be sure you like and subscribe to the channel, too. And check out the back episodes of a space opera show. Yeah, it's been a while since I've recorded an episode, and I've had several ideas in mind of what I've wanted to do for quite a long time, and because of my recording weekly of the Star Wars show that I do, the bi-weekly, once-a-month Depeche Mode podcast I do, and the full-time job of being a radio host, I just haven't found time. But I was so inspired after seeing The Way of Water earlier this week on Thursday night that I wanted to put something together to share with you my thoughts of this amazing film. So let's start off here. First, I want to talk a little bit about the original Avatar. And I'll go back even further and just mention up front, I'm a massive James Cameron fan. Probably next to George Lucas. I put James Cameron up there with J.J. Abrams, with Christopher Nolan, of my favorite directors. All have different, unique storytelling styles. I like the original stories that James Cameron puts together. I like the way that he lays out his storytelling. Was the original Avatar derivative of other stories that had come before it? Specifically, Dances with Wolves and Fern Gully? Sure. But what George Lucas did with Star Wars was also derivative of your William S. Burroughs in your Queen from Mars, John Carter from Mars, your Frank Herbert Dune as well. I don't have any issue with that, so I just kind of want to put that out there up front and just say that I know that there are riffs that James Cameron has pulled from, but everybody does that. I mean, when I wrote my science fiction space opera series, EMBARK, it's a riff on your disaster films, your space operas, your Star Wars, Fast and Furious, all the things that inspire me and that I enjoy in my entertainment, whether it's books or movies. So I really loved the first Avatar. I have a unique connection to it because my oldest, now 20-year-old son, Logan, was right at an age when he really enjoyed it. I remember as we went to go see it on Thursday night together, him making small Scorpion helicopters. He's now a private pilot working on getting his instrument rating to become a commercial and cargo pilot as well. So I have a personal, family tie to Avatar. And because of that, and this is a very subjective sort of instinctive reaction review of Avatar, The Way of Water really hit home for me because of the themes surrounding family, Jake Sully, and his motivation to protect his family were just all notes that struck a chord in this original Avatar fan. That being said, I wasn't clamoring for an Avatar sequel. I was looking forward to it, but not in the way that I would like a Star Wars film. Star Wars is, my first love as it relates to my fandoms. And, with Star Wars, I'll seek out every little nugget and tidbit I possibly can. I was able to avoid all of that. While I was certainly looking forward to seeing the next Avatar movie, it wasn't something that I was counting down the days to go see like I would Star Wars. That's going to change after seeing The Way of Water. So my expectations going into this film were kind of muted. I was just ready to take this adventure to see what James Cameron had created again after making this stunning spectacle of the original Avatar film. It met and exceeded my expectations in a major, major way. I want to talk about this movie in the 3 parts of the 3 hours. It really sort of lays out that way. You could, in my opinion, have split this up into 3 separate films if you'd pushed the envelope in terms of the running time. But you have the part 1, the setup, the conflict, part 2, The Way of Water, and then you have part 3, The War of Water, as I like to call it. So let's start off with part 1, the setup and the conflict in here. We're reintroduced to the Na'vi on Pandora. There's this weird sort of hybrid aspect now of the Na'vi within the forest. almost a they've got this way that they're living now, free from conflict, and immediately we have the arrival of the RDA, which I thought was just stunning. The original film with the arrival of the ship that carried the passengers there was, the opening of that movie after we're introduced to Jake Sully, and you get these massive, impressive, spectacular opening shots with the thunderous music of the ship arriving to Pandora. And then in this film, you get many of these ships arriving, which for me, being just a spaceship science fiction fan, it struck me as just ominous, very much reminiscent of, say, The Empire Strikes Back. Their arrival on Pandora, wiping out portions of the forest as they upend after 10 years of Jake and Neytiri building their family. My son Logan, who's 20, said he could have spent an entire movie just with that arrival and the conflict that erupted there. We have the reintroduction of Quaritch, which I actually thought was perfect. This is what I love about James Cameron. We're not going to, bore you with a ton of exposition. Just, hey, and again, spoilers throughout this, obviously. Hey, we downloaded their memory from their consciousness, and we stuck it into an avatar. You're not that person. You're a copy of that person, but you have all their memories. I'm like, all right, I'm good to go. And we're not just doing it with the main bad guy. We're doing it with his whole team from the original movie. I'm good. Now you get this hybrid Na'vi rebel part of the story in this part one setup. I love the fact that the Na'vi, along with Jake Sully, have grabbed hold of the technology that they had access to and are using their skills as Na'vi as well as modern-day warfare technology in their fight against the humans, if you will, that have arrived on the planet to establish this as Earth's homeworld. It's not touched upon a lot. It's sort of mentioned in passing, but Earth is no longer going to be inhabitable, and they want to set up Pandora as a new home for humanity. Then you have this escape to Waterworld and family. After the confrontation with Quaritch, we know that the whole drive of the movie is going to be him going after Jake to seek revenge. This, of course, is going to be building to what we'll see in the third installment of the franchise. James Cameron has said that there could potentially be 5 Avatar movies, and if The Way of Water isn't successful, they'll release 3 and call it a day. Looks like, based off the box office numbers heading into this weekend, there'll be more films coming out in the future. The escape of the family of Jake and Neytiri and their children heading to the Water Tribe. And you have to forgive me for not using specific names on all this. I still can't track all the names of all the characters apart from Jake and Neytiri at this point in time. But really enjoyed that. Flying on their banshees over the water. The moment where the youngest daughter, who is absolutely just adorable, makes the sort of, are we there yet, the relatable refrain for any family member that's gone traveling with children before. And then we get to part 2, The Way of Water. We're introduced to the tribe there in the ocean portion of the planet, whether or not they are going to accept them in. And you really do have a whole separate movie in and of itself. As the children get to know the other children of the tribe, the conflicts that build between the tribe leader and their son, Jake, and Neytiri's youngest son, and the other family there as well. There was one point during the Way of Water portion in the middle hour of the movie where I completely forgot I was even watching a film. I just sat there and I've arrived. I mean, really, it feels like, and I'm going to jump ahead to something, it feels like the immersive storytelling of this, it's like you've gone on a cruise, right? Or you're visiting, taking a boat ride or a car ride through an exotic locale, whether it's the African Serengeti, or you're in the Caribbean or Alaska or Norway. For me, I just didn't feel like I was watching a movie. I was completely immersed as the Jake and Neytiri family learned the ways of the water people, the connection they have not only with the animals of the sea, and learning more about them as well. Again, the youngest daughter of Jake and Neytiri was an absolute standout. She was completely adorable, Goes without saying, the special effects were fantastic. It looks completely real. I'll talk a little bit about the frame rate here in just a moment. The Sigourney Weaver character. So this is the and again, spoilers. So this is the daughter of the scientist from the first films, Grace, right? Yeah, Grace. Who died. This is her avatar got pregnant. They don't know how. And so this is a young teenage daughter to the scientist, played by Sigourney Weaver, playing a younger version of her Na'vi self. Loved the character. Curious what you think. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com, or leave a comment up on YouTube. I think it's pretty clear in her search for her father that her father doesn't exist. When Grace died and they tried to transfer her consciousness into her avatar, and it didn't work in the original film, and then we find out the avatar was pregnant, because of the daughter's connection with the planet and the power that she has within the planet, within the plant life, when she suffered that seizure, when she tapped into their version of the soul tree. I think it's pretty clear that this is like an immaculate conception. She is the daughter of Grace and the entity, the deity, Awa. Awa is the father, essentially. I dig this, though. I'll get into more of this here in just a moment. I dig this, though, because James Cameron has taken this idea of this planet being alive and this mythology and something that I didn't quite get into in the first film. I didn't quite get into all the, sort of the chanting and all of that. It was fine, but it just wasn't anything that I was really gravitating towards. I like what he did in The Way of Water, because now this is also a fantasy. It has its own set of rules. And now we're thinking about, at least in my opinion, the myth building of this. The similarities that this has with Star Wars within the fandom, of now questions being raised in this film. Specifically, they didn't answer the question of Sigourney Weaver's, the Avatar character's father. I think it's pretty obvious, but it could be something different. That character's daddy issues. The extraction of the whale fluid to stop aging. This all has the potential in a way that the Star Wars original trilogy did, in inviting fandom intrigue and speculation. And again, sort of has Avatar playing by its own set of rules. And I think that's why in the original film it was supposed to be grounded in reality, and this is too as well. And that's why the whole planet being alive took me out of it just a little bit. But now I'm accepting this more as, okay, this is kind of this film's own rules within its own reality, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Top Gun Maverick kind of has its own rules this way. Not in a fantasy way, but rules that apply to Top Gun Maverick that don't apply to real-world aesthetics. Fast and Furious, for example, same thing. So this whole middle portion of the film, I thought was just incredibly immersive, visually stunning. On rewatches at home, I can see it as a way you could probably skip past this and just get right, do the conflict in the beginning and war at the end. That being said, I loved it. I thought it was great, a completely different type of experience within the theater. And then you get to part 3, and this is the War of Water. And I loved how this portion of the film was sort of pared down a bit to the original movie. This was more of a singular battle struggle of Quaritch wanting to kill Jake Neytiri, and less about the complete domination of the planet, which I expect will be coming in part 3. Large-scale battle relative to the plot that, again, sets up a major confrontation for the third film. Neytiri going mama bear nuts at the end of the conflict, leading into after we believe that Quaritch is dead, and then we're not done with the storytelling yet, as our heroes need to get out of this ship, this RDA Sea Dragon that has now sunk. Which there was a moment where I was like, oh, this is going on a little long, but then really enjoyed it when you consider the adopted daughter of the Avatar, of Grace's Avatar, Grace's Avatar's daughter. I should have just learned her name before I did the show this week. She taps into again the animals and the energy from the planet to save her sort of adopted family. And I thought it was really, really clever conflict building between Quaritch, Spider, and Neytiri. Because I wasn't 100% sure whether or not Neytiri was just using Spider in order to get Quaritch to let their adopted daughter go. Or if she really would have straight up killed him. I mean, she cut him, and she was going crazy. But I thought the way that James Cameron played this out at the end worked 100%. Spider saves his Avatar father, but then leaves to go back and join his Na'vi family. The conflict that's brewing in there. They established that earlier in the film of Neytiri not quite being accepting of Spider. And now you have this other story element that you can play with potentially in the next film. Along with, again, I had a bit of an argument with my 15-year-old son who saw it with my wife last night. On Friday, didn't think that the whale fluid being able to stop aging would become a major plot point. Thought maybe it was just a MacGuffin the way the unobtainium was in the first film. And I'm not sure about that. That seems very specific, especially relating to the ability to transfer consciousness into avatars, stop aging. I think there's more that they're going to be playing with that, but I could absolutely be wrong on that. And by the end of the film, I didn't want it to end. I was sitting there for 3 hours, and while I was happy that we were wrapping this up, mostly because I had to work the night, I needed to get some sleep, this was a film when I was watching that at no point I was saying to myself, I really want this movie to end. I never really felt that way. So, my final thoughts on The Way of Water. It had me clamoring for Part 3 in a way that Part 1 didn't. This film is not going to please everybody. I think the 3D is going to be troublesome for some people, as 3D typically is, because it's something that just really didn't ever catch on. James Cameron does it better than anybody else, though. The high-definition frame rate and the toggling between the two frame rates, I know that it kind of bugged me in the beginning of the film, but by the time I got about an hour into it, I forgot it was there. And to be quite honest, I would love to see a film that was all high frame rate. I know this has been played with some of Peter Jackson's Hobbit films, but it really is hyper real. It's just not something you're used to seeing on the big screen. On the big screen, you're used to seeing a certain, the film look a certain way. This was as if somebody was standing right there in front of you because of the high frame rate. And I know that it's not going to be for everybody, but once I got adjusted to it, I really, really liked it. The storytelling, people are always going to have a problem with James Cameron's storytelling. I personally happen to love it. I know it can be hokey and corny at times, but I really dig that. There's a level where it doesn't take itself too seriously. James Cameron's movies never really have. Some of them have been a little bit more heavy on the comedy. This one wasn't. But there just is this grounded sense of, again, self-awareness and a little bit of hokiness to it that I really, really enjoy in his storytelling, and that certainly plays out in The Way of Water. I also have a hard time calling this a movie. Again, I feel like this is an experience, like taking a boat ride through an exotic locale or a plane flight through the Alps, something like that. It's not like just going and watching a movie. It's like you're taking a journey. All right, so that's my instinctive reaction review for The Way of Water, the second Avatar film. Cannot wait for Part 3. It's already been filmed. I'm sure they're working on the production of it now. It'll be out in December of 2024, so thankfully we don't have to wait very long. And I love the fact that this feels like Star Wars for me, like it did when the original trilogy when I was a kid. I really am beginning to love this franchise with a second movie now, the way that I did that original Star Wars franchise. And to be quite honest with you, I think Star Wars can learn something from this. There's going to be a scarcity to the Avatar content that we're getting that I think is only going to benefit the fandom of Avatar. Star Wars, that ship has sailed in terms of scarcity. But there is something to be said about the mythology and the myth building that I think Avatar has picked up on in The Way of Water that's been missing from a lot of the live-action storytelling content that we've received from Disney Plus and Star Wars. And I know that it really just appealed to me as somebody that likes that science fiction fantasy element, likes the intrigue and likes the speculation. And this movie left some questions out there that I think a lot of podcasters and individuals like myself can speculate on. And I know that I'm going to be looking for other people's views and opinions on this to see what they think about those questions that were not answered in this film. So, again, what did you think? talkshownerd@gmail.com. Leave a comment up on YouTube. Thanks for checking the show out, and I hope you'll go and pick yourself up a copy of my EMBARK Science Fiction Space Opera series, available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook as well. As Earth faces its end, the fight to rule the stars begins, really in large part inspired by George Lucas and James Cameron. It's got a bit of romance, a ton of action, written for adults but great for ages 11 plus. 7 books in the series. Again, audiobook, paperback, hardcover, and ebook. And right now through Sunday, you can pick up the ebook for EMBARK for free as a holiday special. So, again, thank you so much for checking the show. Leave me a comment. Drop me an email. And maybe I'll pump out another space opera show sometime in the beginning of the new year. So I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, and you are safe. And I'm looking forward to going back to Pandora here coming up next Friday. I already got my tickets. Bye.
My Nerd World.